Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. The courtroom didn't know what to expect when the bailiff called his name. Denzel Washington, a living legend and one of Hollywood's most respected actors, calmly walked to the stand. He wasn't there for publicity. He wasn't there to defend anyone. He was there to tell the truth, one he had carried in silence for too long. What he revealed stunned everyone. Diddy had allegedly planned to launch a private mission into space, not to escape justice quietly, but to recreate his infamous parties beyond Earth's laws. Denzel didn't just speak about that. He revealed what he had personally seen, how Diddy treated his children behind closed doors, and the secrets he had buried to protect his own career. What began as a celebrity trial turned into something much darker, cosmic, and completely unimaginable. It wasn't on the docket. His name hadn't been whispered in the hallways. No TMZ reports, no tip-offs to the press. So when the bailiff calmly announced, "The prosecution calls Denzel Washington to the stand," the courtroom didn't breathe. It braced. And then he walked in. Denzel Washington, the man known for his stoic grace, the legend of the screen, the actor who carried the weight of kings and revolutionaries, stepped through the double doors like he was walking into the final scene of his most important film. Except this time, it wasn't a performance. This was real. He wasn't flanked by assistants. No entourage. No cameras, just him, black suit, blue tie, a folded piece of paper in his hand. He walked slowly to the stand, paused before taking his seat, and looked out into the gallery. His eyes met Diddy's for a split second, and something cold passed between them. Diddy looked away. The judge leaned forward slightly, visibly caught off guard. The courtroom had hosted celebrities before, but this was different. Denzel was untouchable until now. After being sworn in, Denzel sat still for a long moment. He didn't speak right away. When he did, it wasn't with flair. It wasn't dramatic. It was terrifyingly calm. "I'm not here because I want to be," he began. "I'm here because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't come." He told the court he had avoided testifying for months, that he had wrestled with what to do, that what he had to say wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And then he said it. "I saw things. I heard things, and I stayed silent. I thought if I kept my head down, I'd be safe. That's how this industry works. But I can't do that anymore." He looked straight at the jury. "This isn't about revenge. It's about what happens when power goes unchecked. And if you think this trial is wild now, wait until you hear what Diddy was planning next." The court leaned in, because what Denzel Washington was about to reveal next would make the previous week's testimony feel tame by comparison. Denzel began by painting a picture of the early 2000s, a time when hip-hop and Hollywood were starting to collide in ways that had never been seen before. Diddy wasn't just a music mogul anymore. He was rubbing elbows with A-list directors, studio execs, and top-tier agents. And everywhere Denzel turned, there was Diddy, in VIP lounges, charity galas, exclusive retreats, always surrounded, always in control. He had a way of walking into a room and making people feel like the rules didn't apply to him, Denzel said. At first, it was subtle, harmless even. Diddy would make jokes about running the town, or owning the narrative. But as time went on, Denzel noticed a shift. I remember one night at a private dinner. He leaned in and said, "You know how to stay on top? You stopped playing Earth's game." I thought he was being poetic. Turns out, he was being literal. Denzel said he began to hear more and more whispers, not from gossip blogs, but from colleagues, friends in the industry, artists who confided in him late at night after too many drinks. They'd say, "Diddy's throwing another party this weekend," and then pause, like they didn't know whether to warn me or invite me. But it wasn't just about the parties. It was about the mentality, the invincibility, the isolation. He started talking about legacy in strange ways. He said, "My empire will outlive gravity." I thought it was just arrogance, but I started to worry. I started to wonder what kind of man says that and actually means it. Denzel described multiple moments where he considered distancing himself publicly, but he didn't. The fear of retaliation, of being blackballed or framed as disloyal to the industry's inner circle, kept him quiet. He revealed that a few years ago, someone close to Diddy made a comment that stuck with him. They said, "He's not planning for the next phase of his brand. He's planning for the next planet." I thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. That was when Denzel began quietly collecting what he heard, piecing together what he now calls a pattern of obsession, not just with control, but with escape. And the escape, he said, was not metaphorical. It was real, and it was being engineered. The moment Denzel said the word space, the courtroom visibly shifted. Jurors looked at one another. Reporters began scribbling faster. Even the judge leaned forward, unsure if he had heard correctly. But Denzel didn't flinch. In 2020, I was invited to a private retreat in Nevada, supposed to be about business and creativity, just a bunch of power players unplugging from the world. But then Sean started talking. He described the room, a glass-walled, high-security lodge outside Las Vegas. There were maybe 20 people there. No press, no cell phones, just the highest levels of celebrity and tech money sharing drinks and ideas. Diddy pulled me aside and said, "I'm done with this world. Too many cameras, too many rules. I'm working on something bigger, something off-grid." I laughed, but he was dead serious. At first, Denzel thought it was a metaphor, some wild business pitch, until Diddy opened his laptop and showed him a design. It looked like a spaceship, but inside it was a club. LED floors, velvet seating, soundproof chambers. He called it the Heaven Lounge, said it would be the first entertainment capsule in orbit. The court gasped. Diddy, according to Denzel, said he was working with private aerospace contacts and had already selected his passengers. 10 men, all handpicked for discretion and loyalty. Diddy allegedly described it as a floating sanctuary. He said, "They won't find us up there. No lawsuits, no cameras, just freedom." Denzel stared ahead as he continued. He said the word "freakoff" like it was a brand, like he was franchising his parties to space. He recounted Diddy saying, "I'm about to host the first zero-gravity freakoff. They won't be able to touch me. Not in orbit." Denzel paused. That was when I realized this wasn't madness. It was a plan. He testified that he later heard from a mutual contact that Diddy had already signed paperwork with a lesser-known aerospace firm, promising a non-civilian payload test by 2025. That payload wasn't equipment. It was people. And he was gonna be one of them. What Denzel revealed next would make the plan even more horrifying. He said Diddy referred to the space voyage as a reset, a place to start over. And when I asked what he meant by that, he said, "If I leave the planet, nothing that happens here can follow me." The courtroom fell into a suffocating silence, because in that moment, it wasn't just about a music mogul. It was about a man who believed he could outrun justice by leaving Earth itself. After laying out the chilling reality that Diddy wasn't just fantasizing about space, but actively planning it, Denzel Washington took the courtroom deeper, into the logistics of what prosecutors later referred to as Project Exodus. And what he said next revealed just how close Diddy came to pulling it off. According to Denzel, the plan wasn't isolated or hypothetical. It was backed by serious money. He had real investors, Denzel said. And I don't mean party promoters. I'm talking billionaires, tech guys, people whose names you only see when markets crash or satellites go up. He identified one such figure, redacted from public court records due to ongoing investigation, as a known partner in private aerospace launches. This individual, Denzel claimed, had been working with Diddy since 2021 to acquire land near a launch site in South America, far away from government regulation. They were calling it a private celestial arts platform, but when I looked into it, that was just branding. The reality was darker. Denzel testified that a prototype of the spacecraft existed in simulation software, shown to him directly by one of the tech backers. Inside, it was like a luxury jet, only colder. No windows, all lights, couches, music. It looked less like a ship and more like a trap. But it wasn't just about the ship. Denzel claimed Diddy had compiled a list, names of men he intended to bring with him into orbit. He told me, "I only want people who can handle the silence of space and the freedom that comes with it." That list, according to Denzel, included a former NFL player, 2 disgraced music producers, a social media influencer, and at least one actor whose career dried up after a scandal. Each, Denzel said, had attended Diddy's parties and signed NDAs, and all had reasons to disappear. Some of them didn't even know the full plan. They just thought they were going on a billionaire's vacation. But Diddy wasn't planning to come back. He paused, then added, he called it the no-return run. The Freakoffs, according to Denzel, were going to be staged in zero gravity. No gravity, no accountability. He said, "It'll be like sin floating in the stars." That's when I realized he didn't just want to escape justice. He wanted to recreate the chaos above it. The courtroom sat frozen, because what Denzel had just described wasn't a movie. It was real, and it almost happened. By this point, the courtroom had heard everything from witness abuse to secret tunnels. But when Denzel began to describe how Diddy was nearly launched into space before being stopped, the reality of just how far the mogul's escape plan had gone sent waves of disbelief through the gallery. "It didn't fall apart because he backed out," Denzel began. "It fell apart because someone on the inside finally spoke." He described a whistleblower, a former contractor for the private aerospace company, who had grown uneasy about what he was being asked to build. The shuttle wasn't registered through any official agency, and the modifications didn't make sense for a science mission. It had insulation for soundproofing, artificial lighting that mimicked twilight, and a high-volume speaker system. "You don't need that to study the stars," the contractor reportedly said. According to Denzel, that whistleblower tipped off a federal agency in late 2023. A quiet investigation began, and surveillance intensified. It wasn't until early 2024 that authorities discovered Diddy's private jet had landed near a covert launch site in Suriname. The site matched details previously mentioned by Denzel during an off-record FBI interview. He was going to launch in March, Denzel testified. March 21st. That was the date on the internal doc I saw. He called it the reawakening. The arrest didn't happen in a blaze of sirens. It was surgical. Federal agents coordinated with local authorities, raiding the compound while Diddy was doing a private walkthrough of the mock capsule with 2 of his passengers. The capsule was already loaded with supplies: blackout curtains, exotic oils, oxygen tanks, and a case of imported stimulants. When he was detained, Diddy reportedly said, "You don't get to trap the future." The prosecution later confirmed that Diddy had legally changed the ownership of 3 of his U.S. properties into shell corporations just weeks before the raid. He wasn't just planning a temporary getaway, he was severing ties. Denzel added, "He didn't intend to run. He intended to disappear, to rebuild what he lost, where no one could reach him." The court was shown a snippet of footage from the mock party rehearsal inside the capsule. Party lighting, velvet seating, women in costume, and masked men reclining with champagne flutes, mimicking the vibe of his infamous Freakoffs, only this time in a space-themed chamber. And still, the most horrifying part was yet to come. Because while Diddy's escape was stopped just short of liftoff, Denzel said his darkest memories of the man had nothing to do with rockets or space. They had to do with what he saw behind closed doors in Diddy's home. The courtroom, already stunned, grew cold when Denzel said the next sentence. "I'm not here just because of what he did to grown men. I'm here because of what I saw him do to his children." Gasps filled the room. Diddy flinched. The judge instructed everyone to remain composed, but no one could prepare for what Denzel was about to say. He recalled a 2016 afternoon at Diddy's estate in Beverly Hills. He had been invited under the pretense of a mentorship luncheon for young black actors. It was supposed to be about inspiration, guidance. Instead, it felt like walking into a fortress of fear. Denzel described how he noticed one of Diddy's sons, then a teenager, being forcibly led upstairs by a security staffer. The boy's eyes were puffy, face downcast. "It looked like he'd been crying for hours," Denzel said. Minutes later, Denzel walked past a hallway and heard screaming. A deep, angry voice, and something that sounded like glass shattering. I stopped. I froze. I didn't know if I should intervene. But then I heard it. Diddy yelling, "You'll learn discipline in this house, or you'll disappear like the rest." Denzel said that one sentence changed the way he saw him forever. He later tried to ask the boy if he was okay. The child reportedly whispered, "It's just how he shows love. It's normal." Denzel didn't believe it then, and it haunts him now. "I've seen military generals discipline their kids with more grace," he said. "What I saw wasn't correction. It was domination." Over the years, Denzel said, he heard more. He said insiders confided in him that Diddy's children were often made to act as servants at parties, even being used as buffers for guests Diddy wanted to impress. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean they were told to bring drinks, escort guests to private rooms, and never talk unless spoken to. Denzel's voice cracked. "You raise a child in fear long enough, they don't grow. They shrink." He testified that he had reached out to Diddy privately in 2018, expressing concern. Diddy allegedly responded, "You raise lions by throwing them to the wolves." The courtroom was sickened. One juror wiped tears from her eyes. The judge called for a brief recess, but Denzel refused. "Number, we finish this now," he said. Because if everything else in the courtroom had felt shocking, this was something else. It wasn't about celebrity anymore. It was about children. And the man the world once praised as a mogul had, according to Denzel, ruled his home like a tyrant with no mercy. After detailing the disturbing things he witnessed inside Diddy's home, Denzel sat quietly for a moment, his hands folded, eyes down. The courtroom had gone still again, hanging on his every breath. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said something few expected from a man of his status. "I should have spoken up sooner." It wasn't said for sympathy. It was said with shame. He began to explain the internal torment he'd been carrying for over a decade. How, time and time again, he saw things, at parties, in Diddy's behavior, in the way people around him acted scared, and yet said nothing. "I had all the signs," he admitted. "I saw the fear in young artists' faces. I heard the whispers in hallways. I saw the kids, his own children, being treated like property. And I looked away. He described the conversations he had with other celebrities, men and women who had witnessed similar behavior but were too afraid to step forward. They'd say things like, "If you speak out, you're done," or "You think anyone's going to take your word over his?" Denzel nodded solemnly. I let that fear control me. Me, a man who's played heroes his whole life. I didn't act like one. He told the court about a moment in 2019 when he almost came forward. A former staff member at one of Diddy's production companies had reached out to him anonymously through a friend. The message read, "Please, you're the only one he respects. If you say something, people might listen." But Denzel didn't respond. I told myself I wasn't ready, that I needed more proof. But the truth is, I didn't want to put my family in danger. He looked at the gallery now, eyes misting. My sons told me they always admired me because I stood tall when it mattered. I failed that standard. I protected my career instead of protecting people. The courtroom listened as Denzel described nights where he couldn't sleep, dreams where he was standing in the middle of a Diddy party, but no one had faces, just masks. And every time I turned around, one of my kids was there, trapped, crying. He said the guilt was too heavy. And when he heard about Diddy's planned launch, his literal escape into space, it became clear. If I didn't say anything now, I would have watched him leave Earth, while all the victims stayed here, bleeding, broken, and unheard. And that, he said, was something he couldn't let happen. By this point, Denzel had recounted the personal, the painful, and the nearly unbelievable. But now he turned his attention to the infrastructure that allowed Diddy to operate freely for decades. He didn't build this empire alone, Denzel said. He was protected by people in very high places. He detailed what he called a network of silence, a web of publicists, lawyers, executives, and influencers who knew what was going on, but kept the machine running anyway. There were cleanup crews, literally. I saw them, teams hired not to manage a party, but to erase it. He testified that after every major event at Diddy's estate, a select group of people would arrive hours later. Not just janitorial staff, but specialists. They brought blacklight devices, shredders, industrial cleaners. They were told to clear everything, physical, digital, even emotional. Denzel revealed that in 2015, he was invited to a private screening event hosted by Diddy. During that night, he accidentally walked into a back room where a man in a security uniform was packing up hard drives. I asked him what he was doing. He froze. Then he said, "Just standard sweep, sir. Client privacy protocol." I found out later those drives contained footage of people, guests who didn't know they were being filmed. He also said he received an email from a studio executive in 2018 who wrote, "If the press ever gets their hands on the O3 file, we all go down with him. Stay clear." Denzel deleted the message, but not the memory. And then came the most haunting piece of evidence. Denzel pulled out a printed copy of a redacted legal agreement, an NDA that he said had been given to him personally in 2011 after a charity event at Diddy's mansion. It looked like a standard release form, but when I read the fine print, it said any documentation, testimony, or expression of discomfort at private functions would be considered a breach of agreement. It was an NDA, disguised as a party RSVP. Hundreds of people signed forms like this, Denzel said. Some didn't even read them. Some didn't think they had a choice. And if they refused, they were blacklisted, shamed, silenced. Careers disappeared overnight. You'd hear whispers. She broke the code. He spoke to a journalist. Next thing you know, they're gone. He looked at the jury. This wasn't one man doing bad things. This was a system designed to protect him, at the cost of anyone who didn't play along. And that system, Denzel said, nearly followed him into orbit. The judge offered Denzel a chance to conclude. What came next wasn't just a statement, it was a reckoning. He turned toward Diddy and spoke directly to him for the first time. You said you were building something eternal, something that couldn't be touched. You thought if you could make it to space, you'd be untouchable. He let the words hang. But what you didn't understand is that you don't escape truth by leaving the planet. You just leave the people you've destroyed behind. Denzel then turned back to the courtroom and spoke with the same quiet conviction that made him a legend on screen. But this time, the emotion was raw. If Sean Combs had made it onto that shuttle, he would have disappeared into the stars. No charges, no trials, just more silence, more victims, and the world would have called it ambition. He continued, there are those who will say this is all too wild to believe, that a man like Diddy couldn't have done this. But those people haven't seen what I've seen, haven't heard what I've heard. He paused and then added, and those people didn't hear what he said to me years ago while drunk at one of his parties. He looked at me and said, you know why I'll never get caught? Because I'm not of this world. The courtroom froze, because it didn't sound like ego anymore. It sounded like a man who truly believed he could ascend beyond consequence. I came here today, Denzel said, not to be a hero, not to be applauded, but to end this madness. For the people he hurt, for the children who had no voice, for every person who didn't survive the climb. He folded the paper in front of him, the same one he had carried when he entered the courtroom. Because if he made it to space, it would have never ended. And with that, Denzel Washington stood, stepped down from the witness stand, and walked out, quietly, slowly, without a single glance back. Not a sound followed him, because some moments don't need applause. They need silence. And for the first time since this trial began, even Diddy, hands over his face, said nothing.